All right, welcome to our first video lesson. This one is on adding and subtracting decimals. Hopefully for a lot of you, this is a review from what you did in elementary school, but I know some of us are a little rusty with it, so we're gonna kind of review it together. No matter what the topic is, no matter your comfort level with the topic, we're always gonna be taking notes during these videos. So you should have your note packet out. This first page should look something like this, and the first thing you're gonna do is fill in this essential question. Why is the decimal point so important when I add or subtract decimals? That's something that I hope you can answer by the time you're done watching the video. As we work our way through, you should be filling in all this information as I go through it in the video. Each of these little spots is part of one of the slides. All the example problems are there. You are doing that work along with me. Okay? No cutting corners, no just writing down an answer, no using a calculator. You've got to show that work and how you set up the problem and any of the work that goes along with it. That's kind of your accountability part as you go through the video with me. And then we'll practice this together on the next class period for us. So you're not expected to be an expert with it. This is just to make sure we're all on the same page. So we're going to start with this section right down here, how to add or subtract decimals, with a quick review of the steps. So step one is line up the decimal points in both numbers. Step two is add extra zeros to the end of the numbers if needed. And then step three is just go ahead and add or subtract. So you want to write down all of this information in your notes where it said first, second, third, you're writing down all that information. Pause it, write it down, then hit play, rewind me if you need to, listen to something again. Don't feel like you got to write really fast and try to keep up with me. All right, hopefully you pause it, you wrote that down, and now you're ready to move on. So we have this little reminder at the bottom. It says the decimal point slides straight down into your answer after we line things up. So we have 45.67 plus 6.7. So we're going to reset up the problem, making sure we line up the decimal points. So it's not lining up the last digit, it's lining up the decimal points in the numbers. So 6.7 is going to go right below like this. That decimal point is lined up between those two numbers. Step two, add extra zeros to the end of the number if one of the numbers is longer than the other. And then we go ahead and, in this case, add. 7 plus 0 is 7. 6 plus 7 is 13. Carry the 1. The decimal is just going to slide straight down. 1 plus 5 is 6. Plus 6 is 12. So I put the 2 and I carry the 1. 1 plus 4 is 5. 52.37. Same thing here. 9.8 plus 15.607. So I'm going to line it up. 15.607. So the numbers are just going to get lined up with each other so that the decimal point falls in the same spots. The numbers aren't moving around. It's just how they're lined up. And I'm going to add my extra zeros up top. Then I'm going to go ahead and add 0 plus 7 is 7, 0 plus 0 is 0, 8 plus 6 is 14, carry the 1, and that decimal is just going to slide straight down. 1 plus 9 is 10, plus 5 is 15, and then 1 plus 1 is 2. We get 25.407. All right, on to the next page in your note packet. So we're just kind of moving along. There are a couple things you need to add into your notes up here. It says for subtraction, don't forget to add those extra zeros. And you may need to do some borrowing. So fill those blanks into your notes as we're kind of working our way through. For subtraction, same rule. You've got to line up your decimal points. But here's the key. Whatever number is first has to go on top when we start the problem. The second number always goes on the bottom. You can't just change up the order of the numbers when you're doing a subtraction problem. This one's subtraction. They both have the same number of digits, so I don't need to add any extra digits. But I may have to do some borrowing as I'm doing my subtracting here, and we'll review that. 8 minus 4 is 4. 7 minus 6 is 1. Then we're on to 3 minus 6. I can't do 3 minus 6, so I'm going to have to borrow. I borrow from next door, so the 4 becomes a 3, and my 3 becomes a 13. So some people like to put the 1 next to it. Some people will just rewrite it as a 13 up top, whatever works for you. 13 minus 6 is 7. Decimal slides straight down. And then 3 minus 2 is 1. Okay. Next problem over here, 12.8. So first number always goes on top for subtraction. Minus 3.675. Here I'm going to have to kick in some extra zeros in order to make them sure that they're both the same length. And now when I go to do my subtracting, I'm going to have to do some extra borrowing here. I can't do 0 minus 5, so I need to borrow. But there's nothing to borrow here, it's a 0. So I have to go all the way over to my 8 and borrow to make it into a 7. That 1 turns this one into a 10, and now I can borrow from it. I can borrow from my 10, which makes it a 9, and this one becomes a 10. You'll remember that from elementary school. You might just be a little rusty with it. 10 minus 5 is 5. 9 minus 7 is 2. 7 minus 6 is 1. Decimal is just going to slide straight down. And here I got to do a little more borrowing again. I can't do 2 minus 3, so I'm going to borrow. My 1 becomes a 0, so I can add 10 to make that into a 12. 12 minus 3 is 9. 9.125. All right, last part of our lesson here, dealing with whole numbers. So when you're dealing with a whole number, it looks like it doesn't have a decimal, which makes it hard to line up. But I always like to think of whole numbers kind of like money. That decimal is really at the end of the number on the right-hand side, and then you can kick in whatever zeros you need to. So 6 minus 3.74. So 6, I'm going to add my decimal so I can line it up with my 3.74. I'm going to kick in those extra zeros because I always want them to be the same length. And now I need to do some subtracting. I can't do 0 minus 4, so I go next door. Can't borrow from here, so I'm going to borrow from the 6 to make it into a 5. And that lets me turn this into a 10. So I borrowed from the 6 to turn the 0 into a 10. Now I can borrow from the 10, making it a 9, to make this one into a 0. Or into a 10, sorry. 10 minus 4 is 6. 9 minus 7 is 2. Decimal slides right down, and then 5 minus 3 is 2. 2.26. Next one, 28 minus 15.183. So first number goes on top, but I'm going to have to add that decimal. It's always on the right-hand side. And then I know the other one's got 3 decimal places, so I'm going to add 3 decimal places to my number as well. This one's going to require some borrowing here, so let's get this one. I can't borrow, or I can't do 0 minus 3, and I can't borrow from each of my zeros. So I'm going to come all the way over to my 8 and borrow 1, so it becomes a 7. So this one becomes a 10. And I can borrow from this one, so my 10 becomes a 9, to make this one into a 10. And then I can borrow from this one, which makes it into a 9, so I can make this one into a 10. Some of you maybe have learned different strategies when you have to borrow like that, but whatever works for you, just make sure to show that work. And then subtract. 10 minus 3 is 7. 9 minus 8 is 1. 9 minus 1 is 8. Decimal slides straight down. 7 minus 5 is 2. And 2 minus 1 is 1. 12.817. All right, so your job is I want you to try these 3 problems. Show me how you set them up in your notes. Show me how you did your borrowing or your carrying as you were doing the problems, and then we'll go over these tomorrow in class to see how everybody did. Have a great day.